A red card, a knife, a lynching, and a severed head on a stake. This is the story of the most horrific 20 minutes in amateur soccer history. June 30th, 2013. A date that would forever be remembered in Brazil, not for a moment of soccer brilliance, but for an act of violence so extreme that it would make international headlines. The location was Pio, a small municipality in the state of Maranhão, one of Brazil's poorest and most remote regions. Maranhão sits in the northeast, where poverty is widespread, opportunities are limited, and life is hard. Pio itself had a population of barely 4,000 people. Everyone knew everyone. Families had lived there for generations. In towns like Pio, Sunday soccer is everything. It's not just entertainment, it's community, identity, and escape. These matches bring people together. They give young men a chance to prove themselves. They give spectators something to cheer for in an otherwise difficult existence. On this particular Sunday, two local teams were set to face off in a regional amateur match. Nothing special, no prize money, no scouts watching, just neighborhood pride and the love of the game. Otávio Jordão da Silva was assigned to referee the match. He was only 20 years old, barely more than a kid himself. Like many young men in rural Brazil, Otávio took on odd jobs to make ends meet, trying to make a little money, and it was something he enjoyed. He knew the game, he knew the community, he thought he knew what he was getting into. But on June 30th, 2013, Otávio would make a decision that would cost him his life in the most brutal way imaginable. The match began like any other. Players in worn jerseys, a dusty field, spectators lining the sidelines, maybe 30 or 40 people. Friends, family members, locals who had nothing better to do on a Sunday afternoon. The sun was hot, the game was physical. Among the players was Josemir Santos Abreu, a 31-year-old local man. Josemir was known in the community. He had a family, he had friends in the crowd, and like many players in these amateur matches, he played with intensity and emotion. As the match progressed, tensions began to rise. Fouls were being committed. Arguments were breaking out. Otávio was doing his best to keep control, but these weren't professional players who respected authority. These were men with pride, with tempers, and with a crowd of their peers watching. Then it happened. Josemir committed what Otávio deemed a serious foul, serious enough to warrant a red card. Otávio reached into his pocket, pulled out the red card, and held it high. Josemir Santos Abreu was ejected from the match. But Josemir didn't accept the call. He didn't walk off the field quietly. He refused to leave. Words were exchanged, voices were raised. Josemir got in Otávio's face, arguing, gesturing, challenging the young referee's authority. The other players tried to intervene, but the situation was escalating fast. Spectators started shouting. And then, in a moment that would change everything, Josemir physically attacked the referee. Others say he tackled him to the ground. The details vary depending on who you ask, but one thing is certain. The confrontation became violent. Otávio, now on the defensive, made a split-second decision that would seal both their fates. He pulled out a knife. Why was a 20-year-old referee carrying a knife to a soccer match? In rural Brazil, carrying a knife isn't uncommon. It's a tool, a means of self-defense in areas where law enforcement is minimal. But in this moment, it became a weapon. Otávio stabbed Josemir Santos Abreu. The field went silent. Players froze. Spectators gasped. Josemir staggered backward, clutching his torso. Blood seeped through his jersey. He stumbled, his face contorted in pain and shock. Within seconds, chaos erupted. People rushed onto the field. Josemir collapsed to the ground, struggling to breathe. His friends, his family members, they were all there, watching him bleed out. Someone called for help. Others screamed for an ambulance. But in a town like Pio, emergency services are slow. The nearest hospital was miles away on rough roads. Josemir was loaded into a vehicle and rushed toward the hospital. His friends and family followed, desperate, hoping he would survive. But Josemir Santos Abreu never made it. He died en route to the hospital, his life slipping away before he could receive proper medical attention. Back on the field, word spread quickly. Josemir was dead. The referee had killed him. And that's when everything went from tragic to unthinkable. Josemir's friends and family members, grief-stricken, enraged, and seeking immediate justice, turned their fury on Otávio Jordão da Silva. Otávio tried to explain. He tried to defend himself. Some witnesses say he claimed self-defense. Others say he begged for mercy. But the mob wasn't interested in explanations or due process. They descended on him. The attack began with stones. People picked up rocks from the ground and hurled them at the young referee. He tried to shield himself, tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd surrounded him. They quartered him, cutting his body into pieces. And in a final, grotesque display of mob vengeance, they severed his head. medieval in its brutality. A public execution carried out not by a government or military, but by ordinary people, neighbors, community members, who had been pushed to the edge by grief and rage. By the time authorities arrived, it was too late. International outlets picked up the story. Images from the scene, too graphic to publish in most media, circulated on the internet. In the days and weeks that followed, police launched a massive investigation. They identified and arrested multiple individuals who participated in the lynching. Charges ranged from assault to murder. Some of those arrested were family members of Josemir. Others were simply spectators who got caught up in the mob mentality. Prosecutors countered that nothing, absolutely nothing, justified the torture and dismemberment of another human being. This was barbarism. 2 families destroyed, 2 men dead. For what? For a game? The incident sparked a national conversation in Brazil about violence in amateur soccer. Researchers and sociologists weighed in, pointing to a culture of impunity in remote areas where law enforcement is weak. And disputes are sometimes settled through violence rather than legal channels. Amateur soccer leagues across Brazil began implementing new security measures. Otávio's mother, in a heartbreaking interview, said her son was just trying to make a little money and do a job he loved. The field where it all happened now stands largely abandoned, overgrown with weeds, silent. Local residents avoid it. Some say it's cursed. Others simply can't bear to be reminded of that day. June 30th, 2013 remains a dark chapter in Brazilian sports history. It's a reminder that soccer, for all its ability to unite and inspire, can also reflect the worst of human nature. Should referees be armed? Should amateur matches have mandatory security? What responsibility does a community bear when it allows mob violence to unfold? And perhaps most troubling, how many other amateur matches across Brazil and the world are just one bad call away from tragedy? The story of Otávio Jordão da Silva and Josemir Santos Abreu is more than just a tale of violence, and about how quickly civilization can collapse when a mob decides to take justice into its own hands.